everyone has the tools they need to do these things right away. Like the first time I did a video, I had no microphone. I literally set up my iPhone on like a selfie stick that I propped up with some books and I hit record. So just realize that you have the tools in front of you that you need to make great content. My biggest piece of advice is to just get started. And if you can simplify it into a quick, 1, 2, 3 formula, I think that's a way that people can get over that intimidation and get started today.
Welcome to IndustrialSage, a free video podcast series all about digital marketing for industrial manufacturers. Hear interviews with your peers and find out how they're solving the same challenges that you might be facing in your own field. Coming to you from the Optimum Production Studio in Atlanta, Georgia, this is IndustrialSage.
All right, hey, so for today's episode, listen, I've got a really awesome guest. I've got Chris Luecke here from Rockwell Automation, and he's going to talk to us about building your personal brand. Chris, thanks so much for coming on IndustrialSage.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Danny.
Yeah, no, so I've been wanting to have you on here for a while because I came across you over the summer. This is like July or funny story. It was like July or June, sometime there. I was here in the studio super late, and I was drinking a beer or two, and I came across you on I think you were on a podcast. Gosh, if I can't remember the name, it was maybe like the CSIA organization with Tony.
Tony Verhoeven. He does.
Tony Verhoeven, that's it.
Yeah, he does an industrial automation show out of Madison, I think is where he's based.
That's it. Yes. So and I totally came and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I was just totally. I just love that whole episode. That you basically talked about. What I want to talk about here is kind of like this whole thing that you're doing, this manufacturing happy hour. Which I think is really awesome. So maybe before I get too far down in the weeds, maybe you could just explain, tell us a little bit about your background, and then what is this whole manufacturing happy hour thing that you're doing?
Sure. So I'll give you a bit on my background because at the end of the day, I'm just your average account manager. I work for Rockwell Automation. I serve equipment manufacturers out here in the Bay Area where I'm based. And, I'm an engineer by degree, got an engineering degree from Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Right.
And, once I got that, I knew I always wanted to do something that was a bit more people facing. I'm an extrovert at the end of the day, and I stumbled upon sales engineering and account management as a career with Rockwell, right out of school. And it just seemed like something that allowed me to utilize my technical background and also, get creative with how I would go about driving new business, building relationships with my customers. And after doing, it was probably about the 6-year mark where I'd been doing account management for a while. And I had recently moved to the Bay Area, and a couple things were going through my mind. The first thing was, it's like, I love my job and having a lot of fun, but I feel like something's missing. I feel like I'm not necessarily taking advantage of my total skill set. I used to play in cover bands, and I've always enjoyed being on stage. So there was that little, personal creative element to it. At the same time, and maybe more importantly, when looking at the market that I serve out here in the Bay Area, as you can imagine, you look at all the tech companies out there, it's a lot of young folks in their 20s, early 30s they're the decision makers at these businesses. And I was thinking to myself, it's like, how can I reach this audience more effectively? Because I had been working in Houston for 4 years prior to being out here, where you kind of had the opposite end of the spectrum, a lot of tried and true senior folks that had been working in the industry for years and years, where that personal face-to-face was the way they wanted to engage.
Right, totally.
But I looked at it out here, and younger generations, they want to consume information on video or podcasts or wherever it may be. So I had this crazy idea where I'm like, you know what, I want to do something that's fun and approachable. So I was sitting in my apartment on a Saturday afternoon, and I poured myself a little beer and I got on camera and I sent a little pilot video out to a bunch of my mentors within the company. I'm like, hey, I've got this idea, and it's going to look really similar to this. I'll be talking about tech. I think I was sitting right here when I recorded that video.
Nice.
And I just said, hey, how about this idea where we talk about our technologies and issues that are impacting the manufacturing industry over a cold one. And people loved it. And I started off as a video newsletter, then started sharing it over social media a bit more and more. And over the past 2 years since I started it in October 2016, it's really grown not only from just a video series, but into a manufacturing industry community that's both virtual and physical as well. So that was kind of a long answer to your question, but that's really kind of the history, my background, and how it evolved into manufacturing happy hour.
No, and that's a great answer, and I love it. I mean, so manufacturing happy hour. I love the fact that you're taking something and doing it differently. Especially, that sort of you're talking about how you were in Houston. What were you doing in Houston? Like you said that you're previously you're working somewhere, or
Yeah, so I was still in Houston working for Rockwell Automation.
okay,
I was
all right,
just serving, primarily folks in the energy industry
gotcha.
and chemical industries at
Yeah,
that point. But it was that kind of juxtaposition of the type of people I was working with out in Houston and then out here in San Francisco, where I'm like, wow, I really have a totally different customer base
yeah,
out here. Not only in terms of the demographics and the age and whatnot, but as a result of all of that, just how they consume information as well, which is really why I started gravitating towards video over the past couple of years as a medium to engage my customer base and, quite frankly, a broader audience
yeah.
from a different angle.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. We talk about this all the time on Industrial Stage.
Hmm.
As your B2B decision maker. I mean, this was Google came out with a study in 2015, and they said that
Hmm.
at that time, this was 3-4 years ago now, that
Hmm.
nearly 50% of your B2B buyers were millennial. Well, let's go forward now. Let's look. We know that's going to transition, and and it's going to be the majority. And I would probably argue that it is the majority now. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
and so I think that it sort of behooves you, if you will, to say, hey, we got to kind of like figure out how to get our message out there. Cause like what you were talking about before, that, the, not that, business isn't relationships and but that, because it very much is, but that
Hmm.
traditional way of getting your message out there is different. Like we're the biggest and the best, and it doesn't necessarily cut it anymore. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So what I'm really one of the things I'm curious about, because this comes up a lot, and we're hearing about it a
Hmm.
lot more. I was actually talking with a client the other day, and we're talking. We said, listen, you guys really need to make sure you need to have your Salesforce out there, like actually engaged on LinkedIn. I mean, maybe
Hmm.
even doing videos, whether that's
Hmm.
like public or even like to your prospects, and just using it as a medium to engage. And
Hmm.
they were like, yeah, I don't like, we're a little nervous about that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like we're nervous because
Hmm.
what if somebody says something crazy, or that I don't know. And so what I'm curious is, you kind of did that pilot until, what was that,
Hmm.
obviously they were like, okay, yeah, go for it. But was there any initial like, we're not sure about this, or like how did that go?
Yeah, good question, because I think, especially with a large corporation, that can be a concern. It's like, how is that message going to be received?
Right.
And do the folks in the field, are they going to be able to give that message appropriately? And the reality is, as sales folks, we're tasked with understanding what our company's messaging is and how that's supposed to be translated. So I guess the first thing I'd say is I was really taking that and just kind of repackaging it a
Yeah.
little bit in a
Yeah.
fun way that fit my personality. I think the other thing was, and this is probably the case more with a large company like Rockwell than a small company where you can kind of, try new things a little quicker.
Sure.
I had mentioned that for I think it was about 9 months, I didn't really share what I was doing on LinkedIn yet. I had the YouTube channel, but I was really just using it as a video newsletter to my immediate customer base.
Yeah.
So we're talking like an email list, 200 something people large. And that was really like a test bed to see, was my message resonating with a small audience? And since it was, at that point, after 9 months or so, and after I had some momentum, that's when I put it on LinkedIn
Okay.
and started saying, hey, what does the broader community think about this? And the reality is, you can step back a little bit if you need to. Like, if, let's say, I had my messaging was off a little bit, if someone wanted to say, hey, Chris, we're with Rockwell's marketing department, we would like you to maybe rephrase it like this or take this off, that's something you can fix easily
Sure.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say, on the flip side of that, the benefit, and you were talking about how you were talking to folks about doing LinkedIn and maybe doing video, the benefit about getting content like this out there, I think really outweighs the risk, because when I put a video out from, let's say 2 years ago when I was shooting some of my first videos,
Yep.
those are videos that people can still find on the internet today. And that's
Exactly.
something that I did 2 years ago that's now evergreen content. And I'll give an example since we're on an industrial podcast. One of my most popular videos to this day is still how to select between a managed versus an unmanaged switch. It's a topic people are Googling,
Yeah.
comes up all the time. It's on YouTube. So it's one of my highest viewed videos because it solves a problem that customers are still facing today in the industry.
Yeah.
So again, kind of a long answer to that, but it really goes to show that, there are steps you can take to make sure you're getting the right message out there and, get some feedback to make sure it's resonating with the audience right. But once you've got that down, the benefits totally outweigh the risks.
No, absolutely. I would agree 100%. I mean, so there's some great things that you're talking about. Creating content that's evergreen.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome because instead of like maybe ad sales or let's say a trade show for example, a trade show and I mean I'm not saying they're not valuable. They're absolutely valuable, but you
Sure.
kind of make your mark there and then it moves and we all know you come away from an event or something and you're all excited and then the next day you're like, wait, what happened? Because you're into the
Mm-hmm.
next thing. You've got content that you're able to build this library that people can
Mm-hmm.
continue to search. And then the other thing you said, which I think was awesome, was that your highest trafficked video was solving someone's challenge. That's like
Yep.
the foundation of a
Mm-hmm.
of a strong content marketing
Yep.
really campaign is just answer your prospects or your clients' challenges. Provide value to them instead of saying, "Here's everything that we do, and I'm going to sell you this and this, and we're amazing." And it's like, oh,
Yep.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
And yeah, to springboard off of that, even though I work for Rockwell Automation, there's certainly a Rockwell Automation technology spin to the
Of
series.
course, sure, yes,
At the end of the day, I try to never title one of my videos like new features of the PowerFlex 525 or
right.
something like
Because
that.
what does that
It's
mean
always
to the
some
viewer? Yeah,
exactly. It's
yeah,
always something like how to use a drive to increase your uptime or something along those lines.
exactly.
It's all
Right.
about uptime, productivity, helping customers solve the challenges that they're having in the field.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Let's talk about a little bit of like results. What have you seen as a result of that? Have you gotten more deals, more awareness? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to that, and that's a good question that I've got another two-part answer to because
Okay.
there's a short-term element to this and there's a long-term element
Yeah.
to it as well.
Yeah.
So let's go. I'll start with the long term. I'll start with the macro. At the end of the day, I'm 31 years old. I'm pretty still in the infancy of my career, if you think about it.
Hmm.
And you kind of mentioned at the start in terms of personal branding. I wanted to create a lot of evergreen content that would benefit folks for years to come and that I could build upon as I go along. So with let's be honest, any marketing effort, it's not this, 1 to 2 month, even 1 year type thing. You're really
Yeah.
thinking, what's the 3 to 5 year plan?
Mm.
So I'm really trying to grow this over a period of time. Now that said, I have seen, it's good to keep track of what are those short-term victories that you
Sure.
see along the way. And a couple of the ones that I would bring up is the fact that we were able to bring this video series and turn it into a manufacturing industry community.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when you use the term manufacturing happy hour, that caters itself to doing an event at, say, a brewery or a winery and, bringing a bunch of our forward thinking customers together and getting them to collaborate with one another. Because
Yeah.
one other thing I saw in our industry is that I didn't see people taking advantage of referrals as I've seen in other
Mm.
spots. Here in manufacturing, it's we're so used to the account manager going in and pitching the product and whatnot. But what I wanted to do was help my mutual customers, help them help solve each other's problems. Because similar to Amazon, when you're online and you're looking for that 4.5 star review, I wanted them to exchange best practices and really just be raw and real about what they were seeing from our solution. So that way they could see, okay, this has worked for this person. Maybe this will work for me too.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, it has been a lead generator. I can think back and this is one of the reasons, as you mentioned, that LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. When I post the videos on LinkedIn, anyone that likes that video or comments on that video, all of a sudden, everyone in their network, even if I'm not immediately connected to them, can see that video. And there have been leads and just and not just leads, but really new opportunities like within the sales cycle where you talk about in sales, the role of the salesperson has changed. People pretty much know almost everything about my product before I walk through the door to meet
Yeah.
with them because they
Yep.
can go online, Google product profiles, whatever it may be.
Exactly.
My job is to get in there early to be able to help them understand how our products apply to problems that they're having.
Yeah.
So in doing videos like this and having just a broad range of people encountered on LinkedIn, there have been leads and opportunities and wins, quite frankly, that have popped up as a result of these videos being out on the internet. Is it still something I'd like to see grow and still be a bigger thing? Sure. But again, these are some of the short-term wins and what I look at as a long-term strategy.
No, it totally makes sense. And I love it. You're talking about playing the long game, and that
Yep.
is what a lot of
Hmm.
people can get very short-sighted, especially in our culture today. It's very quick,
Hmm.
fast food. I want it now. I mean, gosh
Yep.
darn, you can go to Amazon and order whatever in 2 days. I have it at my door, or even in an hour, depending on
Hmm.
where you are. So we have a very short attention span, not just from consuming media, but just from a sense of I want to see results and I want to see them now. You talked about
Yeah.
a really key thing you said is that it was 9 months. You're slowly kind of building this thing out
Yeah.
with your customers before you even went onto
Hmm.
LinkedIn, and then even between then and now, it's been what,
Hmm.
2 years? You said
Yep. Yep.
October
Just over
2018
two.
or 16.
Hmm. Yep.
That's not a short-term play.
Right.
And a lot of people I think struggle with like, well, especially in marketing and especially even more in sales,
Hmm.
that it's very transactional, and I have to
Yep.
see the ROI. I
Hmm.
have to see it now. But the things that you're talking about provide so much value, evergreen content that's going to live on there for years.
Hmm.
You're going to be able to you're helping to provide, provide value. And I think that
Yeah.
is huge. I
Hmm.
mean, you're talking about building the manufacturing community there so you can bring in customers to share best practices and solutions and bring
Hmm.
innovative ideas to the table to kind of help each other. And it's just like, look, I'm just providing this venue, this community here. That is awesome. That I think
Yeah.
that is really, as you talk about that role, the change of the salesperson
Hmm.
in sales to be able to facilitate that and really be that solutions provider, that trusted advisor, um,
Hmm.
and it all starts with providing value, and I think you're doing a fantastic job of that.
Yeah, there's an individual that I imagine some people watching this might know, and his name's Gary Vaynerchuk, and
Never
he
heard of the
has a
guy.
book.
No. Yeah,
Well, he's got a book out, and you're probably familiar with this too. It's called Jab, 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 Right Hook.
yeah,
And
yep,
for those that might be watching this that aren't familiar with it, it's at the end of the day, it's all he's basically saying. Provide 90%, just like giving value, give value away with no expectation of return,
yeah,
and then 10% of the time you can ask for something in return as
right,
a result of that. And another thing he brings up is the idea when he's talking about career. He talks about having macro patience in the long run, but micro speed in terms of being, I'll get in the case of manufacturing happy hour, I got to get a video out every week just so I'm consistent and things stay fresh.
yeah,
But am I expecting like a return or a new order on one of those videos like the second I put it out? Absolutely not. It all adds up to being patient and seeing how this plays out over like a 5-year, 10-year period of time.
sure, yeah, absolutely. No, I love it. Yeah, jab, 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 jab.
Hmm.
Provide value, provide value, provide value, provide. I love it. Um, yeah, I love a lot of the stuff that Gary Vee says. Would you like to know what the industry is doing as a whole in terms of digital marketing and benchmark yourselves against the rest? Maybe you're falling behind, or maybe you're crushing it, but you're not sure. Well, guess what? We just wrapped up our insight survey for 2019, and we've got some awesome insights. We talked to over 150 manufacturers, 154 to be exact, where they came in. This is all done digitally. And we asked all kinds of questions about like how, what do your conversion rates look like? Website traffic, what are the strongest tactic that you're using for your marketing? What are you finding? Things like that. It's a great resource. It's a great way to really kick off your 2019. I encourage you to go download it if you want to learn about what your competitors are doing, what they're not doing, and how you can crush it in 2019. So I got another question then. So for somebody who's out there saying, you know what, man, this guy, Chris, I think he's onto something. Like I'm
Hmm.
kind of interested in doing something like this. What things have you learned, or what tips would you give that person saying, hey, do this, don't do this, run away, what?
Yeah. Yeah, great tip. And this is, I've been trying to maybe come up with like a little bit of a structure, a formula to some of the things that I've done. I would say one of the biggest things is, if let's say they work for a company like myself, if you're working for a large company and you're trying to get information out to your customers in an innovative fashion, try it just with your like little customer base at
Yeah.
first. So one thing I say is whether you're doing a video or whether you're doing a blog or doing a podcast, when I create a message on manufacturing happy hour, I really have like three elements to it. And that is one, I tell my customer up front what they're going to learn.
Mm.
I say, hey, on this video, you're going to learn X. So that way the expectation is set right up front where, hey, for the next 3 minutes, this is what you're going to be learning about. So that way the person knows, hey, this applies to me, or I'm just going to move on to the next video, which is fine too. I want to make sure I'm respecting their time.
Totally.
And then we make sure we give three key pieces of information, whether that's a success story related to the solution, whether it's like, some features and benefits, some background on the problem it solves. I tell my guests, it's like, what, this is a quick video. All we have time for is three things top. So I know your solution probably does 10 things really well, but pick the top three, and that's what we're going to focus on. Yeah. And then finally, I end with a call to action where it's like, hey, check out this free tool, or if you want more information, go here. So I really try to use that formula for my videos, but you could do that with a blog post as well. And the reason I bring this up is everyone has the tools they need to do these things right away. Like the first time I did a video, I had no microphone. I literally set up my iPhone on like a selfie stick that I propped up with some books, and I hit record. Because I think people use like the equipment as more often than not an excuse to never get started. And my biggest thing is, it's like, hey, just do something, whether it's recording that first 3-minute video, whether it's, taking a picture of what you're doing on a daily basis and just posting it to LinkedIn with a story related to that. Like if it's related to your field, people love seeing that content right now, just getting a peek into what someone's day to day is like. So just realize that you have the tools in front of you that you need to make great content. My biggest piece of advice is to just get started. And if you can simplify it into a quick, 1, 2, 3 formula like I presented, I think that's a way that people can get over that intimidation and get started today.
I love it. I mean, you hit sort of the nail on the head too, like just getting started and that intimidation, because it can be nerve wracking. It can be a lot of fear. Like, oh, I don't know, is this people are going to laugh at me, or I don't know, what if I say something stupid, or what if I don't look? There's 1,000,001 excuses that you can have. So I love your advice. You just got to get out there and do it. Do it.
Yeah, and to kind of summarize it, what I've been telling people recently is like, hey, if you just get started, you're going to separate yourself from 99% of people that said, found lots of excuses to never get started.
Exactly.
And then on top of that, if you stick with it for even 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, you've just separated yourself from the 99% of people that got started but quit too early. So it's as far as personal brand goes, if you can start something and stay consistent with it, that is still a very rare thing out there. So I would challenge anyone listening to this, if you've got an idea that you're looking to jump on and you think it might work, give it a shot and see how it goes.
Dude, I love it. This is awesome. Chris, listen, thanks so much for coming on IndustrialSage and sort of sharing your story, sharing how you did this, some tips here. If anyone has any questions, want to reach out to you, what's the best way of getting in touch?
Sure. So I would say, right now, LinkedIn is a great spot to find me. I'm just Chris Luecke on LinkedIn. But to connect with Manufacturing Happy Hour directly, my first call to action would be subscribe on YouTube. Right. And if you want to find us on social media, where we're also pretty engaged in conversations, both at Twitter and Instagram, we are MFG Happy Hour. So just like an abbreviated version of manufacturing. MFG Happy Hour. That's on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Perfect. That's awesome. So, all right, well, we'll make sure that all that information is in the show notes so people can find you. If they're listening on iTunes or they're watching the video, we'll have that have that information as well. But Chris, again, thanks so much for coming on. This has really been awesome. I've learned a lot. You've kind of got me excited to keep doing this video thing.
Hey, no, I've seen your work. Guys like you doing the same thing inspire me to keep rolling as well. And I really appreciate the conversation that you led today, Danny. It was an honor to be on the show.
Well, thanks. We'll keep rolling, both of us. So thanks again, man.
Sounds good. Thanks, Danny.
Take it easy. All right. So, man, that was a really awesome episode. I can't tell you how excited was to have Chris come on, because this has come up a million times. We get people asking about this all the time. Hopefully you got a lot of value out of this. From what Chris was talking about, like the importance of really building your personal brand, that and importance of really thinking about the long game, not the short. Let's not be super transactional about it. Things have changed. The way that people buy, we talk about this all the time, has completely changed. The role of the salesperson now has completely changed. You got to be that trusted advisor. You have to provide value, and really think about how to build your personal brand, how that's so important, and you have the tools at your hands to do that. So do something different. I hope take one thing that you watched, that you learned from this video, put into action today. Okay, so that's your homework for today. Thanks for watching. And listen, if you're listening on iTunes, I would love a review. You can do that. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at industrialsage.com/questions. We'd love to answer them for you. We love your shares and your likes and your comments on social media. So until then, I'm Danny Gonzalez. Thanks for watching Industrial Sage.